as someone whose online presence is partially about like a lot of old technology and nostalgia, and that's kind of something a lot of people know me for, I do have a bit of a love-hate relationship with nostalgia, and I'll exactly go on to why. um I saw someone making a post saying that nostalgia is fascist and it's been so misinterpreted. At the same time, I also understand that as a quote, if you take it on face value, it is not really portraying itself in the best way, because it's not all types of nostalgia being fascist. Because, like, for example, I don't know, liking old cartoons, or liking, I don't know, synth pop from the 80s, or saying, oh, my favorite console is the PS2. That is not fascist, and nobody in their right mind would call that fascist. But the thing is, nostalgia has been used and is used by fascists to promote their cause. You've seen it in back in the 40s with the fascists, the Nazis. You see it now with Trump. You see a lot of mentalities of, we need to go back when things were good, and the only way we can go back is by doing this unethical thing, because they are the reason why things are not the way they were before. And it's like, no, it is a way to pretty much brainwash you into thinking it's someone else's fault, and it's not just things changing, and oftentimes being a matter of capitalism. Like, I don't know, let's say some valid reasons to be nostalgic: old cars, or like, let's say refrigerators, right? Refrigerators are from the past. They would usually last a lifetime. You have a lot of fridges from the 60s, the 50s, the 70s, the 80s even, that still work. Meanwhile, you'd probably be hard pressed to see a fridge from now lasting 50, 60 years in the future. But I don't think the reason why fridges aren't so good anymore is because of minorities or this and that. It's because of capitalism, because companies realize, oh, we can make the product look cheaper, like feel cheaper and be cheaper, add something to make it stop working fine, or just something that makes it work just enough to last through the warranty, and then break right after. That's actually a thing with a lot of cars, apparently. A lot of them break suspiciously not too long after they escape warranty and stuff with mileage. Anyway, that is capitalism trying to squeeze as much money from you as possible. That is not the fault of any groups, unlike what these fascists are trying to tell you. And again, I believe that it's fine wanting to look back or missing being a kid, but it's not okay when you want the full societal attitudes, uncritically, and you're just completely, oh yeah, I want to go back to, say, the 50s, and you want to go back to the 50s fully. You don't want to go back to like a pop culture form of the 50s where, you like, you can just say, hey, I wish I was, we were in a time where we had those like little fancy cafes, and we hung out with friends, and the economy was actually really good, and we were all excited for like the latest Little Richard or Buddy Holly record or whatever. That's totally fine to, wish you could have experienced, because like, as someone who likes old music, I kind of wish I knew how it is, just like listening to one of those like old school artists as their music is brand new or whatever. But when you want to uncritically just like go back to those times, you gotta like think, would you want to go back to those times if you were, say, a woman or black or queer? No, the fuck you wouldn't. Like, there's positive aspects of past moments in our culture, but I genuinely feel like all these fascists who are like being like, oh, return to the old times, the good days, they kind of miss the point of history. The point of history is you look back and realize, oh, maybe we did this mistake in the past. Maybe we shouldn't repeat it. You know, you gotta learn from history. That's kind of like the whole thing. Those who don't learn from history are doomed to repeat it. And the problem is, you shouldn't repeat it. You should, see what worked, see what didn't work, and make the best situation for everyone. For example, I don't know, people should actually look at why the 50s were doing better economically. Maybe work on the capitalism side of things and say, oh, maybe we shouldn't let companies get away with doing all of these horrible things, and maybe that could make a positive change towards making refrigerators that last for 80 years. I don't know. Like, a big part of my online presence even is how I'm very into a lot of old 2000s technology, into like iPods and old computers, and I think that's cool. However, I'm into the pop culture and technology of the 2000s, but like I wouldn't want to return to, I don't know, transphobia being more prevalent and accepted. Like, just genuinely, it was totally fine to just use slurs. Homophobia also being very widespread, and racism still not being as frowned upon as even now. And sure, things have gotten worse these past few years, and that is a very concerning trend. However, I feel like there's a difference between saying a things 5 years ago were a little more progressive and being like, oh, we should go back to how things were culturally and societally in the 80s when people were dying of an illness because the government generally just did not give a damn. Like, you know what I'm trying to say here. Like, there's a huge difference between liking old stuff and falling for weaponized nostalgia. um like, the thing is, people also get mad about, like, when it comes to the nostalgia can be fascism or is. um like, you can kind of also look for fascists or fascist like mentalities in a lot of circles that are dominated by nostalgia, or generally men, but nostalgia especially. Like, for example, uh there's so many people who are into retro video games, not because, oh, they grew up around those times, so it brings them back to a time when things were personally safer for them, or yeah, that was just a good time for games, or that's when their genre of choice peaked. But because they think that every single game nowadays is bad because of minorities, the anti-woke groups, the people who will probably glaze Half-Life 2, but if it came out now, they would have a huge problem with, the fact that there's a lot of, like, women and black people and so on and so forth in that game that have, like, strong roles. They're not stereotyped, and that's kind of the thing. Those people are fascist. Maybe they're not in the same vein as, I don't know, people who are, like, embracing active, like, harm against people, but those people do have the tendencies, at the very least, if we're, like, to give them the most, I guess, kindness interpretation, if that makes sense. Or just a lot of nostalgia, like, a lot of people in nostalgia circles tend to have those mentalities. You even see with movies or animations, where people, instead of saying, oh, movies aren't that good anymore because budgets are being very badly attributed, and they've always been, companies are looking to hire the cheapest company to do the worst CGI, because that's a problem now. Back in the 2000s, why CGI is worse now than it used to be before? Because companies are hiring people to do contractual work for cheaper and cheaper and faster, because they don't care about good CGI. They want something cheap and fast. And most companies, and if those companies cannot do it under like their tiny budget they promise, they have to pay out of their own pockets. And that's why most companies who do CG tend to shut down, even if a movie is successful. Just look at the Sonic movie one's CG crew. They're not around anymore. And I feel it's also because audiences have started to expect CG. If it's kind of like you can put practical effects now, but unless they're like done really well, they're gonna look at best nostalgic, at worst corny as shit. And it is kind of a combination of entitlement and corporate greed. And that's kind of how it goes for everything. A lot of people are like, oh, I wish CDs were still popular and the streaming world is horrible. But let's be completely honest, the average person, like I would probably be fine going back to CDs only, or iTunes or whatever. But I'm not the average person. I am probably a super nerd. And that's something I need to understand. Realistically, the average person, if you told them, hey, stop using Spotify or Apple Music or whatever the fuck you're using nowadays, and just buy CDs, buddy. Just buy CDs. Just spend 10-15 bucks, or maybe a few bucks if you buy them used. Most people are gonna look at you and be like, what's wrong with you? Like, I don't want to do that. That's too expensive. Even if you try to explain them that, oh, long term, the more of them you have, the more of a library you'll have, and permanence, and yada 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 yada. Like, to me, it makes sense because I am someone who's into all that. But the average person is probably going to be like, okay, but why would I care if I'm going to pay 10-15 bucks or whatever on Spotify for the rest of my life? Why would I care about it having it be taken away from me? And you have to understand that that's another problem of capitalism and shitification. There's like a very interesting tactic that a lot of companies have been using during like this century now, where they make a good product, something that is really good, innovative, changes the world. For example, Netflix. People were tired of cable having a ton of commercials, or having to buy a DVD and having to go and change the disc and this and that and this and that, and you had to spend 15-20 bucks on a DVD back in the day, or I don't know how much. You had to spend some cash. And then Netflix came around and it was like, oh yeah, you gotta like pay like what, $7-8 a month. You have a huge catalog of movies, and all convenient. All you need to have is the internet and maybe like a Nintendo Wii, or a set-top box or something, which a lot of people would tend to have. So it was quite convenient for people to start moving there, because it sounded like a great deal when you put it that way. So why care about cable or DVDs? Pay $8 a month and you have a ton of stuff. However, the tactic is you start with a generally good service that changes how things are, makes it so convenient, makes everything so much more frictionless. But you make it generally good. You make it generally like a great deal. Early Netflix is generally incredible deal because everything was on there and it was for cheap. But then you start taking away things. You start removing things. You start making things more expensive. You add multiple plans. You say, oh, yeah, you gotta pay $20 now, buddy. Oh, you can still pay like $12, but it's gonna be 480p and with ads, and it's not gonna be DVD quality 480p. No, 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 no. Streaming and YouTube or whatever 480p is dog shit. Like a lot of people think that 480p is unwatchable because they see 480p as YouTube or streaming quality, which is more like a 360p or 240p kind of thing because the bitrate is really bad. DVD quality is like probably on par with like high def to full HD on streaming, probably bitrate wise. The point is that eventually the streaming service becomes shittier and shittier, and you have to pay more. Look at how, if you want to have all the content that you had in 2010 on Netflix for $8, you have to probably spend close to $100, just saying. And you'll say, okay, but like, why aren't people not ditching it? Because people got used to it. If you tell someone that, oh yeah, just buy Blu-rays, just spend 15, $20 all over again like you used to, and you'll just buy your collection eventually. Like, yeah, okay, there's a lot of advantages to that as a collector myself, but the average person isn't going to go back to it anymore because they've gotten used to the convenience of Netflix or Spotify or any subscription service, and that's how they get it. So no, the problem behind your complaints about nostalgia isn't minorities, it's capitalism. Anyway, changing the topic, I guess. I feel like also a lot of people are only nostalgic in thought because they want to whine. Like, for example, you see all these people being like, "Oh my god, I miss the old Windows XP days and GTA San Andreas and the PS2 and ooh." And you're like, okay, so have you bought a PS2? Have you bought a retro computer? Have you even played San Andreas in recent times? They're all gonna say no, but I miss those days. And it's like, okay, you can still play it. Are you missing playing those games and experiencing those things in general, or what you truly miss is being a child? Like that's exactly the reason why you know older Gen Z and millennials or whatever are looking at those like younger Zoomers who are like nostalgic about 2016 and are like, why are you nostalgic about that year? That year was shit. But to them, it wasn't, because they were 11 and their entire experience was going back home from school, watching I don't know, Adventure Time and Victorious on Nickelodeon and Adventure Time on Cartoon Network, playing on their PS4, I don't know, whatever game, I don't know what you're playing, and of course, when that's your entire experience, I don't know, watching Markiplier, I don't know, but like when that is your entire experience, of course things are gonna be good, because we are all gonna be nostalgic for the times we lived in, when we were kids. Oh, not all of us. There are some people who have had some really shit experiences, but a good chunk of us will still be able to look fondly at a time in their childhoods. For us, it's probably the 2000s and early 2010s. For example, for me, I would say if I have to pick a year from the 2010s, it would be 2013, because all these games came out, PS4, GTA 5, and I was finishing up with middle school and starting high school, and it was just kind of a very nice time of my life, more or less. But someone who is older than me will say, 2013 is shit. Just tell me when. I'm nostalgic for 2007, which I'm also nostalgic for, but in a different way, because I was still very young. And someone older than them will say 2002 baby, and so on and so forth. You get my point. And 10 years from now, there's going to be someone nostalgic for now. There's going to be some kiddo, like Gen Beta kiddo or Gen Alpha, like later Gen Alpha kiddo, being like, oh, I miss being a kid and looking at funny images of Tun 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 Sahur. Those were the days. Something like that. But I feel like the truth is, it's fine just admitting that you miss being a kid. Everyone does miss having, no responsibilities and life being simpler because you had adults to kind of take care of you and do things for you. And now you're an adult, you're in your 20s, and your mama and your papa can't really like schedule doctor appointments. You have to call the pizza place and order pizza, and you have a day-to-day job, or you go to university, or whatever you do, or you're neat and you're kind of stressed out about the neat life and how it's difficult financing yourself if you don't have a good support group. Anything can happen. I don't know who you are, the person you're watching, but I feel like the fact of the matter is, a lot of people like being nostalgic. They talk about how everything was better, but they don't make an effort. And trust me, I think a huge recommendation I have is try to live out a bit of that nostalgia. For example, right by my side, I have a Windows XP computer, as some of you might know, and it's fully decked out, pretty much the best specifications hardware-wise Windows XP handles officially. And trust me, I run everything that I could even dream of running on XP. And you'll ask, oh, but I can't do that on my regular computer. True, but I think it's just also like extremely fun doing it like that, just actual hardware. It's kind of like playing on a retro console. But anyway, going back to the topic, in May I used my XP computer for a month as my main computer, and I also used the first gen iPhone SE from 2016. Not only is the iPhone still very much usable, and even the XP computer, but I had an incredible time doing it. Why? Because I genuinely like older games and older hardware, and Windows XP, it was a genuinely great operating system, and I feel like I was at least willing to put in some effort to make it work, which most people like that aren't willing to. It's easier for them to say they miss a time and not try to experience it. And again, I know that you cannot experience being a kid anymore when you're an adult. Like, you can try to emulate it, you can try to use an old computer, you can try to use like a Raspberry Pi to recreate older TV channels and shows and everything. You can make it as accurate as possible, but the truth is, you're not going to be 10 again. You are only a kid once. You can still enjoy yourself and have a great time, but it's going to be from the angle of an adult. And that's okay. That is okay. You can still enjoy things as an adult. You can enjoy the now also. For example, I've been listening to a lot of 2025 albums. I would have said every day, but these past few days I've been slacking big time. And I had a lot of fun. I have a lot of fun. Even if not all of those albums are like that great, some of them are okay. Like, the average one is at least okay. I'm still having a lot of fun trying out new things, and we have a huge world that we can experience so many things. I have a lot of video games, right? I have a huge collection. I could stop buying any new games, and I think I have enough games to last me a lifetime. I feel like what makes the good old days is that we are open to new things. If we close ourselves out to only things we have experienced, we are also kind of sacrificing a lot of the charm of living in the now. I feel nostalgic for 2019, 2020 when I started collecting, and I got into I got into video games and music and movies as a whole in a more serious manner. And I feel nostalgic for that because I opened myself up to so much stuff, new and old alike. And I don't have as much nostalgia for like a few years back because I kind of didn't do that as much. I feel more nostalgic for like things I've done a year ago or a year and a half ago because I've experienced new things, and I think that's where the true charm comes from. Trying out things and experiencing new things, and old things too. Just keeping an open mind and an open heart. Because otherwise, how are you gonna have nostalgia if you don't open yourself up to the world? Anyway, that's all. I'll see you all next time.